Ukraine has reached an agreement with Trump. The deal will be signed. Rehabilitation of relations with America. The teams from the US and Ukraine will meet after the incident in the Oval Office. Yermak got in touch with Mark Watts, and a meeting was scheduled. You can see the details right now.
According to him, the day before, he had a phone conversation with Trump's national security advisor, Mike Watts, where, according to Yermak, they agreed on a meeting between the Ukrainian and American delegations in the near future.
Today, our teams from Ukraine and the United States of America started working on the meeting. Andrei Yermak spoke with Mike Watts. There is positive movement. We hope to see the first results next week.
Military aid to Ukraine from the US has been halted. This is the end. All the weapons have been deployed on the way to Ukraine. It is already known that the pause will last until the peace talks begin. And more details coming up in the program.
Thus, Trump suspended military aid to Ukraine after a tense meeting with Vladimir Zelensky last week. This was reported by a White House representative, according to Reuters.
We are suspending and reviewing our assistance to ensure that it contributes to solving the problem, a official stated on Monday, speaking on the condition of anonymity.
The weapons that are going to Ukraine, whether they are being shipped or flown, and those that are, for example, in Poland, Iran are also included. As long as Ukraine is not being supplied but is being used by American officials, it's the word pause.
The pause in military aid is likely needed by the states to reach some agreements. How long the states will negotiate is unknown. However, experts are already stating that the halt in aid from the US could primarily affect the missiles for air defense and ammunition for HIMARS and artillery.
It's like an element of blackmail. It was February 28th. It's complicated, let's say not very good. A pleasant conversation between President Zelensky and President Trump. It turned into a diplomatic conflict, a scandal. After this, a decision was made to suspend, to put on pause the supply of weapons. This is a form of pressure on our country. In another way, it's hard to explain.
The American channel CNN reports that Ukraine will be able to fight without US assistance in the current. The pace is set until the beginning of summer. As noted by the previous President Joe Biden in an interview with the channel, in recent months during his presidency, he has increased the supply of weapons to Ukraine, which has provided the country with significant stocks of modern armaments. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal stated that Ukraine is working with Congress and the Trump administration to ensure that American support continues until a peace agreement is fully reached on Ukraine's terms, as a victim country. Ukrainians are also continuing attacks on Russian military facilities. On the night of Tuesday, March 4th, explosions were heard in the Samara region of Russia. Drones attacked the Syzran oil refinery. Nevertheless, the Russians are succeeding in the Kursk region. According to reports from the General Staff, the Russian army has intensified its offensive actions in the Kursk region. In total, there were 109 combat clashes on the front of the Ukrainian-Russian war over the past day.
In the UK and France, they are ready to go to the US with Zelensky to present a plan for a partial ceasefire. The visit is scheduled for next week. All the details of the peace plan from the EU leaders will be revealed right now.
The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, and the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, may travel to the US along with the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. To present the new peace plan, writes the British publication Mail,
presenting a consolidated position of Europe, including Ukraine, regarding the next steps towards achieving at least a limited ceasefire. Well, from the perspective of further strategy, still leads to real peace negotiations with a long-term perspective to prevent the war from happening again. And in Ukraine and in general in Europe.
Diplomatic sources from the publication reported that the visit to Washington could take place as early as next week.
Still, we are seeing a certain affirmation at the level of dozens of European countries, and not just European ones. We can recall Australia, which is ready to join the peacekeeping contingent. Still, Europe can now take on the political responsibility on their part, to demonstrate certain elements of security guarantees for Ukraine.
Journalists claim that US President Donald Trump is considering the possibility of stepping back from NATO leadership and insists that European allies take on more responsibility for the security of the continent. After the quarrel between Zelensky and Trump, on February 28th, the president of Ukraine flew to London, where he met with the country's Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
But again, I remind you that Starmer, Macron, and President Zelensky all have a clear position that the United States itself must also take on a share the issue of implementing security guarantees for our country, because without the United States, this puzzle will be incomplete.
During these same days, a summit of European leaders took place, where support for Ukraine was discussed, as confirmed by the President's office.
There is a clear position that the foundation of a potential ceasefire must include strong security guarantees. In particular, the possibility of involving mechanisms of the North Atlantic Treaty as one of the security guarantees and strengthening the Ukrainian army is being considered.
Following the summit, Starmer stated that the United Kingdom, along with France and possibly one or two other participants, will be working with Ukraine on a ceasefire plan, which will be presented to America in the future.
President Zelensky's post on the social network X was positively received in the White House. It's not for nothing. President Trump noted this message in his historic speech, which lasted over 2 hours. And this just shows that we are on the right constructive path. But of course, before the resumption of military aid from the United States, it is clear that we are expecting the signing of a rare earth metals agreement in the future, and quite likely the United States will want to take advantage of the current situation to revise the approved Tau project of the framework agreement that was presented earlier before Zelensky's trip to the US. But nevertheless, I think that this year will all happen within a very tight time frame. And indeed, one can expect at least a partial resumption of military aid. First of all, regarding, for example, the Patriot missiles and everything that is currently protecting our cities from Russian attacks. And plus, once again, President Zelensky proposed to establish a limited ceasefire using airspace, maritime space, and its surrounding territories. Stop the strikes on energy facilities, as well as exchange prisoners of war.
On March 1st, French President Emmanuel Macron called American President Donald Trump to discuss the conflict between Trump and Zelensky, as well as the possibility of establishing diplomatic relations between Ukraine and the US.